In today's WoodStory, we are building this modern and functional ensuite bench complete with towel storage. This bench was inspired by a Pottery Barn furniture piece. However, there was a few issues. One, it was sold out, and two, it was not the right dimensions that I needed. So I did what any woodworker would do, and I grabbed my tools and I got to work. So go grab your tools and let's start this WoodStory.
To build this bench, I use approximately 15 board foot of white oak. When in doubt, get a little more wood, because you do need to make sure that your pieces, once processed, are dead straight, or you'll have a really hard time getting your bench square. Let's start by taking a look at this bench and break it down into manageable building steps. This bench consists of a frame and a separate top for sitting on. The frame and top are all made up of wood that is 2 centimeters thick and 4 centimeters in width. We're going to start by building the end pieces of the frame. Then we will connect these with the longer side pieces in order to complete the main frame. The top will be built on its own. With the frame completed, we can further add supports that will allow us to lay the bottom shelf. And before you know it, this bench will be done. So let's get into it. I recommend that you start by cutting only the sizes needed for the frame build. This will allow you to adjust for errors should you make any mistakes. To make the frame, the following sizes are needed. 4 legs measuring 48.8 centimeters. 4 side frame pieces measuring 35 centimeters. And 4 long frame pieces measuring 114 centimeters. Remember, all of these are 2 centimeters thick by 4 centimeters wide. I'm going to use dowels to assemble the main frame. This is because I want a nice clean look, and I won't have to fill in any holes later on. You can, however, opt to use pocket holes instead, which will speed up the process. I am making a mark where the bottom support is going to go. This piece needs to sit 10 centimeters from the ground to the top of the piece, as shown here. To drill the dowel holes, you'll need to follow the instructions given by your specific jig, as they're all a little different. I used my Jessam dowel jig, but I actually won't recommend it for this project. I found it very difficult to clamp it on these smaller pieces, and the way you usually make the opposite hole was also difficult, as the pieces were so short, making it hard to mark it the way that the jig instructs you to. So 2 of the sides are now done, and they have the dowels ready to be inserted. I'm not plopping them in just yet, because if I do, they become quite the pain to take out, and I do want to add some glue to them as well before I fully insert them. But I have to decide if I want to do any kind of edging on here before I assemble it, because it's going to be a lot easier for me to router any edges on these over on the router table until after or before I assemble it versus doing it after. So once I've decided that, I'm going to add the long cross beams, and then we almost have our frame ready. So the skeleton is almost done now. I just put it in, not tight, but just so that it would all stand together. However, having now done most of the dowel holes, I did have a couple of minor mistakes where the wood isn't completely aligned. So I am going to go back in and fix these one by one as I assemble it, because I do want this to be completely flush all the way along. So I'll fix those. It's not a big deal, because at the end of the day you won't be able to see it, and the dowels are there to give this whole thing strength along with the glue. So at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to see any of these mistakes. So in that case, it'll be like they never happened. With the frame mostly done, but not yet glued together, I spent some time making the cuts for the top, which will be the part of the bench that you'll actually sit on. I was a little short on wood, and I wanted to avoid another trip to my lumber yard, so I had to be very careful of how I cut up my remaining pieces. Luckily, I had just enough wood, which was a big relief. I finally glued up my frame using wood glue and dowels. The hardest part is keeping all the pieces in the right order and in the right direction, so take great care as you glue yours up. I found that gluing up the longer sides first to be the easiest approach, and I waited until the glue was cured until proceeding to glue up the middle connecting pieces. Next, we're going to make the top for the bench. It's going to be made up from 3 middle vertical pieces measuring 39 centimeters and 14 horizontal pieces measuring 55 centimeters. Again, all of our pieces are all 2 centimeters thick by 4 centimeters wide. I chose to use pocket holes for this part of the assembly, mainly because of its speed and ease of use, but I was frankly also getting tired of my doweling jig. And my patience was starting to wear out, trying to get those dowels properly aligned. So good old Craig to the rescue. If you don't know the Craig pocket jig, do yourself a favor and go get one pronto. Yes, I know that some woodworkers are against the Craig jig, but then again, some woodworkers are also against power tools. So really, do what works for you. I'm definitely going to. So I'm at the point now where I have hollowed out all the pocket holes. And I am going to start attaching them to the main frame piece. And we have 3 of them, one at the end, one in the middle, and one at the other end. And I'm going to get it started, and I want these pieces to be really nice and straight. So I'm using a clamp in order to get it started. And that's going to make sure that it's completely square. And I'm going to do all the outside pieces first, and then I'll work on the inside. That way, I'm sure that my frame is exactly square the way it's supposed to be. Now, it is important to note that I am using Craig screws that are intended for hardwood. You don't want your wood to be splitting when you're doing this. Otherwise, you're going to have to pre-drill holes, and we want to try to avoid that. So make sure that you're using the right screws for the job and go slow. To get the correct spacing between each board, start by taking the width of all of your boards and multiply it by the number of boards. For us, that was 7 boards on each side, and each of these were measuring 4 centimeters. So that's 7 times 4, which equals 28 centimeters. Now take the total length the boards are going to span over. For us, that's 39 centimeters. Subtract these 2 numbers. 39 minus 28 equals 11 centimeters. Now only take the number of spaces needed. For us, that's 6 spaces required. Divide these 2 numbers, which equals 1.833 centimeters spacing required between each board. Once you know this spacing, grab a deck of cards and lay out the correct number of cards corresponding to this measurement. Then all you have to do is use the cards each time you lay a new board, and your spacing will be perfect. So now that I have added all of the Craig screws, I can go ahead and fully tighten them. I only just put them in just a little bit right now, just to make sure everything looks nice. And as you can see from the front side, everything should be nice and tight once they are fully screwed in. And that's the one side done. Good morning. It's another day, and I'm hoping that the majority of the towel bench will get done today, because that was a progress from yesterday. I'll go a little closer so you can actually see it. But look, we got the top on. It's not secured yet, but it's done. And then today we'll be adding these brackets down here. So we're almost there. We're almost there. Shouldn't be much longer. What do you think here? We're gonna get done? For the bottom shelf, I started by cutting the outside pieces to size. They needed to be notched to fit perfectly. So I made a mark, and then I brought it over to the bandsaw to carefully cut out. I used my chisel for the very last bit, ensuring a great fit. So I am actually deciding to change my design a little bit. Originally, I was going to have these exposed, but I don't like the look of it. This is looking all nice and clean, and then having these down here, it's just not going to be the same feel. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to add a bracing piece, which is going to go under here, like this, like that. And then with that there, this is going to go out like that. And then I am going to add a border on top like this. And I'm also going to cut off part of that one now. And then this will essentially be on top, and that's going to give it a nice edge. And I think that's going to look a lot cleaner and neater. The two new pieces that the shelf will lay on ended up measuring 35 centimeters, and I pre-drilled 3 holes before attaching them with both wood glue and screws. Because of my design change, I had to cut off a bit more from the outside shelf pieces so that they would fit within this new border. I also cut the 2 edge pieces, and I know I said that all the pieces that I used for this project were going to measure 4 by 2 centimeters, but this one piece does not. It measures 2 by 2 centimeters, and it is 35 centimeters long. Once these support pieces were in place, I could proceed to place the outside frame pieces. These I used wood glue and clamps to secure, taking my time to ensure it aligned perfectly with the below frame piece. While the outside pieces were drying, I went back and worked on the top. This step is complete overkill. No one is ever going to see the underside of the bench, but I did decide to add plugs to the pocket holes anyways. I had 56 holes to fill, and the packet from Craig said it came with 50. But to my surprise, it had exactly 56 plugs. So thank you, Craig. I really appreciate your extra little plugs included. I went back to assemble the bottom shelf pieces. Luckily, the math for the spacing is the exact same for this shelf, making it super easy to use my cards again to properly align all the pieces. I only used wood glue and clamps to secure these pieces. So now all that's left is just the final sanding, and then I will be coating this with a coat of Rubio Monocoat. Hopefully I have enough. I only have this teeny little can, but it's supposed to stretch a really long way, and then it will be done. With everything sanded, cleaned, and coated in the color Smoke by Rubio Monocoat, I allowed it to dry for a few days before adding the final hardware. I could have glued the top on too, but I chose to use these figure 8 fasteners. They will allow for a bit of wood movement. I pre-drilled these holes using a Forstner bit, and then I attached the top. And just like that, this bench was done and ready to be used in my ensuite. This bench had several moments that tested my patience, but I'm really happy with how it turned out in the end. And I'm very glad that I made that final design change, as it gave the bench a much more finished look. The original Pottery Barn bench was around half the size and cost $700. My bench ended up costing $150 in wood and about another $100 for the Rubio Monocoat, hardware, screws, etc. So overall, this bench cost me $250 to make using white oak. Let me know, do you like these bigger furniture build videos, or do you prefer smaller projects? Let me know in the comments below what you want to see me build in future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Check out this other do-it-yourself build video, and I'll see you soon in the next Wood Story.